Welcome everyone to the second episode of a podcast I'm calling Food for Thought, where we discuss the issues of poverty in the United States, with a particular emphasis on food security, and talk to the people making change happen. And with that in mind, I am so grateful to be joined today by the current director of the AmeriCorps VISTA program, Maggie Garvey. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I am thrilled to be here, Robert. Anytime I can support a VISTA, AmeriCorps VISTA member in their work, I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, much appreciated. And just to kick things off, could you maybe talk about your service experience and how that informs your current position and how you kind of envision the program and its goals?
Yeah, sure. So I am really lucky in that I am serving as the acting director of the AmeriCorps VISTA program, but I also have experience being an AmeriCorps VISTA member. So my background and my work really was about anti-poverty work before I ever found VISTA. I had been working as a community organizer and um, growing up in my family, I grew up in a pretty wealthy community, but a couple of times my father lost his job. And each time we went from relative comfort to scarcity. And that taught me at a very, very young age what income inequality really looks like in this country and how important it is to fight for the social safety nets that protected my family and lots of families like mine across the country that are one job loss and one life experience away from actually needing support from others. So I was already kind of wired to do this kind of anti-poverty justice organizing work. And then I found AmeriCorps Vista because somebody said, "Do you know that Vista will pay to move you across country?" And I signed up to be an AmeriCorps Vista member working with an organization called Mat Force in Northern Arizona. And it was an incredible experience. I was hired by a county attorney in a district and a chief of police who kind of realized that they weren't going to arrest their way out of a methamphetamine epidemic and that they needed to have some community support and some community problem solving. So they hired a bunch of organizers, myself included, and I fell in love with national service in that experience and then went on to found an organization called Arizona Serve, which is now a national service intermediary in Arizona for AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Vista. And then I was the state director for Kentucky and then the state director for Kansas and Missouri for AmeriCorps, the agency, before opening the regional office and the Northeast region office before coming to work with Vista. So what I can tell you is I've had experience in as a member, as a project director, as someone who's hiring Vista members, who's thinking about how we do the community development work. But my worldview as a community organizer, I think, brings a lot to my role and what I think what I focus on in this role in the acting director position.
Well, that is certainly like a very like impressive resume that I think proves that you walk the walk, not just talking the talk. And I think that probably um, adds a lot, especially coming from like the top of the organization. I think that really means a lot. Um, but
Thanks.
at Hunger Free America, the goal for our AmeriCorps members is to help work towards the eradication of hunger within the country. Um, how do you think that that our AmeriCorps members can essentially work themselves out of a job?
Yeah, this is such a great question. And the work that Hunger Free America does, along with the rest of our network that's working in food security, is so important to our nonprofit sector and to the communities that need us. AmeriCorps Vista has been working in the food security space for more than 60 years. It's part of our origin story. In that, though, we're still piloting new ways to do this work. The problem of hunger is evolving and changing. During the COVID pandemic, Vista made a big investment in what we called the Food Security Initiative to bring on some statewide project sponsors, about 164 sites across the country, including in Puerto Rico. And through that initiative, like 500 VISTA members served through the pandemic, specifically looking at um, increasing food access and food security for folks who needed it. And they've done that initiative did some incredible work. And one of the cool pieces of that initiative was really about supporting states as they think through how they address food insecurity at the statewide level. We have a great partnership in Maine with Maine Ending Hunger. They have a plan, a white paper plan to end hunger in Maine by 2030. And that work is being supported on the ground by a core of AmeriCorps Vista members who are helping to implement and seed each individual piece of that plan to bring that network forward. So while we're still doing the like support the food bank, get the donations, bring the volunteers in, raise the money, we're also thinking about how we innovate in that space too, and trying to solve problems at the speed that our community is solving them.
Right. And that kind of ties into my next question because I mean, I think the work that AmeriCorps does is more than necessary.
Mhm.
But like the problems that we're addressing, poverty generally has been a part of the American experience since the country's inception. So what role would you say the program plays in addressing that ever-present yet ever-changing issues of poverty in the country? I guess part one,
Mhm.
and how can we be sure that we're helping solve and not perpetuating kind of the problems that we're trying to address?
Awesome. This is like, I feel like if I had to write a question that is the core of the AmeriCorps Vista journey, this would be the question. So I'm really glad that you asked it. Anyone who works in the social service sector for any length of time is eventually going to ask themselves some version of this. How do we know we're helping instead of perpetuating this kind of like upstream versus downstream solution and problem solving? The premise of the question is that there's not enough resources, so we have to pick one, right? And what I offer folks is that like that premise is entirely false. Like we actually can't pick one. We can't choose to help people right now who need food and shelter or fix the system that perpetuates and creates conditions where people need assistance, right? We have to do both things at the same time. And I think that's the piece that is the magic of the AmeriCorps Vista program. You know, um, there are a lot of our Vista members that are in service right now that are on the front lines, right? They are in food pantries trying to organize shelves, trying to create new ways to recruit volunteers, to make sure that there's the right type of food, to make sure that it's culturally appropriate food. Like they're doing really important work, but they are feeding people who need food today. And sometimes we hear the question of like, is this actually going to solve hunger on the long term scale? My answer to that is like, we have to zoom out, right? Like, we have to do both things. We don't have to do both things right now as an individual. We can both meet people's needs right now and in the longer term know that we have a role and responsibility to play in our citizen hat and also in the course of our career to change policies and systems. There was a news story that just hit my inbox 2 days ago. It was like a Google alert for a candidate who's actually running in for his fourth, I think it was his fourth Senate term in Vermont. I don't remember the candidate's name, which is probably good because I probably shouldn't say it anyways because he's currently up for election. But I'm going to misquote him, but he essentially said in this news article that during his term of service as an AmeriCorps Vista member, he had the opportunity to visit folks who essentially did not have enough fuel to make sure that their homes were safe and livable in the winter. These were elderly and low income folks. And from his Vista term of service, he went on to like lead a renewable energy coalition in Vermont, to work for the Vermont Public Service Department around clean energy development. And now he's running for his fourth term in the state Senate and clean energy and making sure that folks have access to the type of fuel and the type of protection that they need to be able to know that they're going to be able to make it to live through the winter, is something that's core to his worldview as his leader in the Senate. And that's just like one Vista story, right? Like the truth is over 60 years of Vista's work, we are both meeting people's needs right now, but we are also training up a new generation of civic leaders who are going to continue to move forward throughout the world, thinking about how they take their experience into their public service careers. I think it's probably accurate to say that more VISTA members learn about poverty in their term of service than they do eradicate poverty. We learn about the conditions, we learn about the structures, we learn about what's working and what's not working, and we do the incredible work of trying to help our first line nonprofit partners and public partners do more with less, right? Like we are talking about capacity building and sustainability, but oftentimes it's trying to figure out how we do more for people who live in poverty with existing resources. And that's a challenge that never ends, and it's a slog. So I'm, as someone who grew up with a mother who works in nonprofits, I'm also always overjoyed when I talk to VISTA sponsors, the supervisors of our VISTA members, because I know how much support having a VISTA member can mean for that nonprofit professional who has the help that they need to be at the front lines to meet the next wave of immediate need.
Right. And I mean, going I mean, that creates I mean, and it's the truth, the complexity of the issues that we try to tackle as vistas and the
Mhm.
time frame in which the volunteers are asked to tackle these issues. There's
Mhm.
so many limiting factors and just a lot to wrap your head around.
Mhm.
So maybe could you talk about what you think it takes to set yourself up for success as an AmeriCorps volunteer if you're interested in joining the program or if you're already in and you're just trying to get your bearings?
Yeah. I mean, I said, I think at the beginning of the calls, my undergraduate degree is in political science, political studies, but an undergrad in community organizing. So many of the things that I'm going to say right now are like inherent principles in community organizing. But one of the things that I would say is really important for our AmeriCorps Vista members when they start service is really to develop your listening skills, to to walk into places with an open heart and an open hand, and a desire to see things be better, to move things forward, but a willingness to accept that the best solutions are going to come from those you're serving and the folks that experience the problem every day. Listening, getting good at asking good questions, really hearing what people are saying to you before you roll up your sleeve and start implementing what you think might be a good solution. Does that resonate? I can see you nodding and shaking your head. You're in year two of your Vista term of service. This seems like it's resonating with you.
Yeah, I mean, we all come in with varying degrees of, I mean, different perspectives or why we joined the program, and we all have what we think the answer is. And I think the reality of the experience of service um, is a necessary complicating factor. But
Maybe we'll get that printed on the back of our next T-shirts. A necessary complicating factor. That's exactly what it is. Especially those of us who wake up pretty clear about the fact that we want to make the world a better place. Like, like we have to get close. We have to get proximate to the problem, and we need to listen and learn before we can actually put some solutions in place that matter. So my first thing would be get as proximate as you can to the problem and listen. Like that's my first thing. The second one, um, the AmeriCorps Vista network, it sometimes can be really isolating to be an AmeriCorps Vista member. You can be like one Vista member in one food bank somewhere. But there are thousands of active AmeriCorps Vista members and hundreds, 1.3 million AmeriCorps alums across the country. My second one would be about networking, and not like my business card and the happy hour networking, like truly building a network that's about making connections, that's about networking people to know each other. That's about building resilience within your network so that you get to hear from different people, but also that you get to build your your folks that you go to when you didn't get that grant or when you did that presentation to the city council and they misunderstood you for the seventh time. Like whatever it is that you're doing, you need to have your crew of folks that um, that see the world the same way that you do, that are mission aligned with you and can have your ear and give you counsel in that special way. So many of the folks in my network that I call are folks I either did AmeriCorps Vista service with or helped support, recruited as an AmeriCorps Vista member. Those networks that are now 20 years old for me, they matter. So this is a great opportunity within the program to build lifelong friendships, to kind of build your team for the work ahead of you.
Right. And just um, go all in into the experience. And like you said, I
Yeah,
think um, just everything. It's more so a learning experience as much as it is like your desire to kind of change the world, which is something I
yeah,
think we look for in Vistas. I mean, that's a guiding principle or what I
yeah,
think attracts most people to the program. But
yeah,
just like you said, like it's a learning experience and just to make those connections and really dive in. Um,
yeah.
so,
I,
but
I will say there's probably one other thing I frequently tell AmeriCorps Vista members, and that's to take care of yourself. Because the sometimes we talk about poverty or hunger, and we those of us who work in the social service sector, we can get a little numb to like what we're actually talking about. But poverty is deadly in this country. People die on the street, like, and our Vista members are close to that. People don't have enough to eat and they encounter children who don't know where their next meal is coming from. That's real and it's heavy. The folks who work in nonprofits every day, they develop skills and ability to be able to kind of weather that type of crisis for the long time, for the long haul. But a lot of our Vista members, some of them actually come from communities where this is their lived experience every day. Others don't, and that type of being proximate to that type of pain is hard. It'll take something out of you. So the last thing I would say is like take care of yourself. Remember, like, to fill up your reserves by having fun, by trusting your network, by asking for help when you need it, because this work is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and it'll take something out of you if you do this anti-poverty work for a really long time, because it's hard work.
right. Well, thank you again for coming today to discuss the program with me
Mhm,
and just the how essential the work is that the Vistas are doing. And just like you said about finding people of like mind, just
mhm.
to bounce these ideas off of each other and really dig into like the motivations for service and why it's important. So thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Um, and if I could just sneak in one last tiny selfish question, because I'm a bit of a bookworm myself, but I was
Mhm.
curious if you had a recommendation for volunteers generally or something that every kind of like um, volunteer should have on their bookshelf.
Yeah, I thank you for giving me this question in advance because it allowed me actually to go get my book. So the Vista team recently read this book, Poverty by America. It's Matthew Desmond, the same man who wrote Evicted. And the Vista team, we're a small team, we're about 30 folks. We recently had our own book club reading this book, and a group of us have gone to see him speak. I think if you felt called to come to the AmeriCorps Vista program and to serve, either because of your lived experience growing up and living in poverty, or because you want to change the world and you think it's wrong to tolerate poverty in such a wealthy nation, this book is going to arm you with some information that's going to help you understand the context that you're working in and living in. I've been doing this work for a long time now, and there were definitely pieces of this book that surprised me and that I really had to read a couple of times to be like, wow, that actually does not match my assumption of the reality that I was living in. So there's he coins the phrase poverty abolitionist. I don't know if he coined it, but he definitely uses it throughout the book. And I love that notion, and I love the idea that AmeriCorps Vista members are, in their own ways, making sure that our country is no longer tolerant of the conditions of poverty.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I will leave it there. But again, very thankful to discuss the program with you. And yeah,
Robert, thank you for having me, and thank you for being an AmeriCorps Vista leader. That means you did a term of service with AmeriCorps Vista and you came back to support others. Your work in training, in helping support your network. The Vista program is so important, and the AmeriCorps Vista leader position is really special in terms of your ability to help coach and mentor other AmeriCorps Vista members in the program. And I mean, this idea here, this podcast, this series is so smart. So thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be one of your guests, and thank you for your